So recently, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid did an interview with former senior advisor to Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, David Axelrod. So he appeared on his show, which is called Axe Files. It's on CNN, I believe. And he did an interview with Harry Reid, and they discussed Elizabeth Warren, and they discussed her position on Medicare-For-All, and just kind of like going over her time in the Senate. And this I found to be very, very interesting. And this is going to give you a really, really good idea of where you should expect Elizabeth Warren, where you should expect Elizabeth Warren to go policy-wise as the campaign rolls further, and if she were to possibly become the nominee, let alone become president. So check this clip out. It's very, very interesting. Check it out, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
I think she's overcome a lot of the concern that people had about her. She was in the Senate. I put her on the banking committee. Some people said you shouldn't do that. She's a flamethrower. She never surprised anybody, never surprised the ranking member, the chairman of the banking committee. She's a team player, and I think that...
You put her in leadership as well.
I sure did.
Yeah, so you see her as
As Lyndon Johnson said.
I know what he said. Yes, go ahead, say it.
Yeah, as Lyndon Johnson said, he'd rather have them on the inside in the tent, because it's better to have them pissing out than pissing in.
And there is a concern as well that's expressed by some establishment Democrats that she is too far left, that her Medicare-For-All, eliminating private insurance, free college, free other things, and so on, that this will...
I think that's, let's just wait. For example, Medicare-For-All, I asked me, how do you feel about that? I said, I think what we need to do first is let's make sure Obamacare is strengthened again. Republicans have done everything they can to hurt it. Let's strengthen it. We almost got the public option the first time. That's as good as Medicare-For-All anyway. And so
that's not what she's saying, though.
Well, but I think you give her some time. I think that she's not in love with that. I think you'll wait and see how that all turns out.
So you think she's more pragmatic than
I know she's pragmatic. Just wait.
Yeah. Do you think the party itself, there's this lament that the party is drifting left?
David, you and I have been involved in Democratic politics for a long time.
Yes.
And we know that the primary, the Democrats are pulled way to the left, and it used to be that Republicans were pulled far to the right, but now they have nothing other than what Trump wants. But I think that what's going on now is no different than what's happened in years past. Primary, they're always pulled to the left. That's what the parties do to candidates.
And the general election,
they move quickly. That's what history's all about.
Okay, so I have a lot to say about that, and hearing that makes my skin crawl, thinking about how these people think they have everybody fooled, and in the ways they talk about these things. Typically, it's not as brazen as he's saying it here. So in the way he's talking about it, like, oh yeah, just wait, she's gonna, referring to whoever, whether it's Elizabeth Warren, whoever. Just wait. No, don't worry. They're not gonna fully commit to this policy or that policy. So the fact that he's being so brazen and open about it is, I don't know if it's more maddening than somebody that just goes out there and just puts out a bunch of bullshit and fucking talking points or rehearsed talking points and stuff. But either way, it pisses me off because they think we're idiots and they think we don't know that what he's saying is extremely problematic and extremely concerning, and should have everybody fucking scared about the prospect of Elizabeth Warren as president. And I don't mean from the right wing, I mean from the left wing. I mean from the Democratic base of the progressives. So first, Harry Reid says that she has, quote, overcome a lot of the concern that people had that people had about her after first getting into the Senate. So what he's basically saying is that everybody was really, really worried that she was going to be going in there and being like this super progressive, lefty, populist type, senator, and she's going to, revolutionize the system, and she's going to, start getting people worried and shaking in their boots. It turns out she didn't actually end up doing any of that. Now, maybe she had initially, but ultimately she didn't end up really concerning anybody. She overcame a lot of the concern that people had about her. That's what he said. And that's essentially, again, because this is all political talk from politicians that needs to be translated. Basically what it means is that initially we were worried that she was going to, change our system and change the way we do things, but now we know she's not going to do that. Now we know that he literally said it, that he let the cat out of the bag and said that she's a team player. Come on, man. You're basically just saying that she is working with she's working for the Democratic Party and is not working for the people. That team player line is just complete. You definitely let the cat out of the bag on that one. And it's amazing how brazen he's being about it, because usually these politicians, to be fair, Harry Reid isn't a politician anymore. He's out of office. But usually these people are much more craftier with the way they talk. So maybe he feels like since he's not a politician anymore, he can just, speak freely and not have to code anything. But that's to your detriment, bro. That's to the detriment of Elizabeth Warren. That doesn't make anybody feel better about Elizabeth Warren at all. Other than the elites out there. He also says that when he put her on the Senate Banking Committee, people said he shouldn't have done it because she's, quote, a flamethrower. So that's basically the same point that I was in the first part that I pointed out there. Yeah, people were worried about her. They were worried that she was going to fuck shit up, and she didn't do anything close to that. Now, if you compare what she has done to what Bernie Sanders has done, Bernie Sanders has gone as far as interrogating heads of the Federal Reserve, such as Alan Greenspan and all these people that have been involved in helping speed up the process of recessions in our country, and the economic crashes and stuff. These are all people that have sped those different processes up, and Bernie Sanders has been at the helm of calling these assholes out, but raking them over the coals, making sure they get called out for their fucking pathetic tactics and pushing the policies that they push for. Now maybe Elizabeth Warren has done that too, but Bernie Sanders has spent his entire career, whether he's been in the House or he's been in the Senate, he has spent his entire career talking about this over a 30-year span. He has known, while Elizabeth Warren talks about, I have a plan for that, well, Bernie Sanders, his slogan is, I'm consistent on that. I'm consistent on that. Because he's been consistent on everything. He's consistently pushed for the same things year after year after year. And people at one point, if some of you remember, people at one point were like, yeah, Bernie Sanders has been saying the same thing for so long, acting as if that's an attack. They were using that as an attack against Bernie Sanders, saying that he's been advocating for the same thing for the last, 30, 40 years. That's not a bad thing, bro. That's a good thing. Clearly, these people, they don't understand that. They got their heads up their asses, and they're too busy worrying about optics and trying to, get along with the party and stuff, being team players, as Harry Reid says. But they're not worried, and they're not worried about the policies. They don't care about the policies. They just want every Democrat to work with the Democrats. That's all it is. Reid also admits that she never surprised anybody, including the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and he also had her in Democratic leadership. So the fact that she didn't surprise anybody, including the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, I'm not sure who that was. I remember at one point it was Chris Dodd, and Chris Dodd was a big time corporate Democrat for sure. I'm not sure who it was after him. Yeah, it was definitely Chris Dodd. I can't remember who else it was after that. And then the fact that, didn't surprise anybody, including the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and the fact that he also had her in, Harry Reid had her in the leadership, the Democratic leadership, that's a big deal too, because that means that you're probably not going to rock the vote. Now, to be fair, Bernie Sanders is in the Democratic leadership in the Senate, but that's only because he's getting more young people into the Democratic Party and recruiting them and getting them into the system, not as politicians, but as voters. So they're only honestly using Bernie Sanders to benefit themselves. But in reality, a lot of us are not falling for the shit that the Democratic Party is pulling. We just trust Bernie Sanders. We don't trust the Democratic Party because we know that they're doing everything they can to rig the system and screw over progressives like Bernie Sanders. Reid also says that when he was asked about Medicare, for All, he said we should, quote, strengthen Obamacare because Republicans have done everything to destroy it. So we know that. That's fine. The fact that they've tried to destroy it doesn't mean that automatically makes it wonderful. That doesn't mean that just because the health insurance industry hates Obamacare that more of Obamacare is what we need. No, we need better than Obamacare. We need to, and by the way, when they say this whole strengthening Obamacare is Medicare-For-All. At the least, it's public option. And that's something that, now that Pete Buttigieg and to some extent Joe Biden are pushing for too. But that's at the least what it should be. But that's not even good enough. So I don't even know if I think that's what they're referring to when they say strengthen Obamacare. But that's not good enough. That's bullshit. So what we need is Medicare-For-All. Medicare-For-All is what we need, man. That's not. And that shouldn't be controversial. So, and the fact that you're saying, because we should strengthen Obamacare because Republicans have done everything to destroy it. Yeah, and they become successful at destroying it. Just like I was talking about before about how capitalism doesn't work, because if you go out there and talk about how I'm going to reform capitalism, that's never enough, because you're never going to get far enough to convince people that the capitalist system is truly going to work, especially when you're going to have Republicans coming in office in the next 4 to 8 years, and they're going to come in and just going to overturn everything and take over and going to remove all those reforms, and they're going to make the capitalist system into what they want it to be: more free market, more libertarian, more laissez-faire. And when you just put reforms on something, you put a Band-Aid over a gangrenous wound, you're not going to fix the system, and you're not going to fix all the loopholes that are used to fuck people over more. Harry Reid also says that we, quote, we almost got the public option the first time, claiming it's, quote, just as good as Medicare-For-All. Oh my God, that is extremely laughable. The public option is not even close to as good as Medicare-For-All. I've talked about before how the whole idea of having that public option there is, and this is something Cenk Uygur has explained about how you put all the healthiest Americans on the private care, so the private option, and then you put all the sickest people on the public option, and then that fucks up the whole insurance pool. And then the people that are against the public option or any kind of public insurance, they can say, oh, look how terrible public insurance is. Look how shitty it is. It's terrible. It doesn't work for anybody. Private insurance is better than everything. Private insurance is what you need. That's what they do. So, and this is another thing that Cenk said in that same interview that I played, where he was explaining that about the downsides to the public option, is he was explaining how Democrats hated the public option when Barack Obama was president. So when he first became president in 2009, they were pushing for the public option very, very lightly. And, but majority of the corporate Democrats and all the centrist, neoliberal Democrats, they were against it. They hated the public option. So talk about how, we almost got the public option. No, you didn't. That's bullshit. And assholes like Rahm Emanuel, who was the chief of staff to Barack Obama, he was pushing to get rid of the public option. So back then they hated it. All of a sudden they love it now. And yeah, right now they love it, but back then they hated it. So all of a sudden they've changed because Medicare-For-All is the popular thing now. So now they have to push for the public option. And then according to Harry Reid, it's just as good as Medicare-For-All. It's ridiculous, man. Harry Reid is a fucking slimy ass motherfucker. And then he says, so when referring to Elizabeth Warren, he says, give her some time because he thinks Warren is, quote, not in love with it. So this part is very, very key. So when referring to Medicare for All, and, he's saying, give her some time because he thinks that Warren is not in love with Medicare for All, adding that she's much more pragmatic. So, quote, just wait. So basically, in layman's terms, or non-political terms, if that is non-political terms, or if that is political speak, but in non-political terms, that's basically saying that, she doesn't actually believe in Medicare for All. She's more pragmatic, but which means she doesn't believe in it. She never believed in it, and she's going to go further away from the idea of Medicare for All. And that's what it's going to be. And if she ever believed in it, she would have been in favor of it from the beginning. So clearly she doesn't believe in it, because she's not even advocating for it. She doesn't know how to explain how she's going to pay for it. She keeps waffling on that, as I explained in the last segment, and I've explained on many past podcasts before. She never explains that. She always dodges those things. She's dodging it like Neo from the Matrix. Just constantly like dodging it. She does not want to answer that question, and Harry Reid lays it out perfectly here. Again, he let the cat out of the bag. This whole interview is letting the cat out of the bag. He's constantly exposing Elizabeth Warren as a sellout by accident, I'm guessing, unless he's sabotaging her for some reason. But he's totally exposing her without even realizing it. But in reality, what he's doing is he's speaking to the corporate elites and the big donors out there and giving them like a wink and a nod, like, oh, don't worry. Elizabeth Warren is going to be on our side as in, because Harry Reid is also on that side too. He's on the side of those big donors too. But he's totally just admitting and putting it out there that Elizabeth Warren is going to sell out if she's president, let alone if she goes into the general, that she's not going to be advocating for Medicare for All. And if she is, she's going to do it in the worst possible way. And just as we talked about in the last segment, they're looking at different revenue options now, the Warren campaign is. So again, she doesn't believe in it. That's the conclusion that I reached. And that's the conclusion that everybody else should come to as well. Elizabeth Warren does not believe in Medicare for All, period. She does not. And if you still believe that she believes in it, you're clueless and you're naive, and you're just believing a bunch of propaganda and talking points that she's laid out, and she's obviously gotten you to buy into. And then finally, responding to the question about the Democratic Party quote, drifting left. And this part is brilliant because, again, it exposes, the typical slimy politicians we have out there. Reid says, we know that the Democratic Party gets pulled far left in the primary until the general election comes around, when they go back to the middle, because that's, quote, that's what history is all about. So again, to translate, he talks about how the Democratic Party drifts left to benefit, to cater to the progressives and the leftists out there. But in reality, he knows, we know, he says we know, but he knows that when you get pulled far to the left in the primary, you just end up coming back to the center. You end up coming back to the middle, because that's, quote, that's what history is all about. So he's saying that Elizabeth Warren, Democratic Party, these are people, Joe Biden, whoever, any kind of argument that they're making, like even Joe Biden with his, his bullshit fucking public option idea. We don't want to throw 160 million people off healthcare. In reality, he's not going to be pushing for any kind of public option. Same as Pete Buttigieg with his Medicare for All, who want it. None of these people are going to be pushing for an actual plan that people are going to want. They're just saying, so what again, it comes down to pushing for a centrist neoliberal corporate policy that will ultimately leave you zero room for advancing that, moving that spectrum to the left, because you're already starting from the center essentially, and you don't have any more clout or any kind of momentum to move over further to the left, obviously because they don't want to move over to the left, but they don't have any more room to move over to the left because they want to maintain everything in the center, if not to the right. So that's how it is when it comes to these people. And in the mentality of these people, whether it's David Axelrod, whether it's Harry Reid, and he says, oh yeah, you and I have been in politics for decades. So that's like them talking about pontificating together about how we totally know how the system works. We know that when it comes to being in the general, when it comes to being the primary, you have to be drifting left or going far to the left, and then when the general comes around, you go back to the center again. So that's just political speak between two, corporatist, whatever, operatives. Well, obviously Harry Reid wasn't an operative, former politician and then an operative, talking about how, we'll easily be able to move over to the center just to appease those corporate donors and appease, Republicans. That's what Hillary Clinton did. That's exactly what Hillary Clinton did, and that's what led her to losing to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump was portraying himself as a fake populist, because he's not really a populist, but he was portraying himself as an economic populist, when in reality he's a fake populist, but he did a good job of portraying himself that way. And Hillary Clinton was talking about how the system is so wonderful, while Donald Trump was talking about how I'm going to blow up the system and make it better to benefit regular people. Obviously, he hasn't done that. Again, he's a fake populist. So let's make sure people understand that. But when it comes to Hillary Clinton, she doesn't want to. Hillary Clinton didn't want to change anything. She wanted to keep everything the way it was. And I guarantee you, any person that's not Bernie Sanders that gets, that's the person that becomes the nominee, anybody not Bernie Sanders is going to keep maintaining the status quo the way it is. I guarantee it. Now, you guys may come out from watching this segment with Harry Reid, where he, lets the cat out of the bag about Elizabeth Warren, thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. Whatever. I still feel good about her. Same with her waffling on Medicare-For-All. It's not that big of a deal. It's no problem. She's still going to be pushing for progressive policies. This is to me at least, is the nail in the coffin for the fact to prove that Elizabeth Warren is not even close to being a progressive. So this is an article from Common Dreams, which I quote all the time, and the author of the article is Robert McChesney, and he is a big-time progressive. He's been around for a very, very long time. He wrote this article. I want you guys to check it out. I'm just going to read you guys the title because it's a really important article for you guys to really figure out what the differences between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders is. The title of the article is Means Testing: Sanders versus Warren on the single most important policy idea for progressive success. And then the subheadline says, basing eligibility on wealth or income level is phony progressivism and a crucial tactic promoted by the right to eliminate social welfare programs that could benefit the entire population and the common good. So what Robert McChesney articulates in this article is that the idea of means testing, which basically means that you should only be able to qualify for certain social programs, Medicare-For-All, student loans and any kind of social program you can think about. That those are probably the only two. Those are the two main ones, obviously, because we're not talking about firefighters and shit like that. Like obviously, whatever kind of firefighter insurance you should go to everybody regardless. But when it comes to Medicare-For-All, when it comes to student loans, these are all based, and that's how it is right now. These are all based on how much income are you making? How much income are you making, right? And same, and I'm sure she would take the same position when it comes to eliminating medical debt, even though she's not going to eliminate medical debt. But I'm sure she would means test on eliminating medical debt too. And but the whole idea of means testing is to only allow certain social programs for people to qualify for certain social programs, like the ones I mentioned when it comes to healthcare, student loans and shit, based on the income that you are making. So if you are making under a certain amount of money, that's how you qualify for getting that specific social program. And that is not progressive. That is not a good way to be advocating for policies that are popular. These are all popular policies. So when it comes to Medicare-For-All, when it comes to Social Security, all these things, Medicaid, all that stuff. These are all policies these are all social programs, entitlement programs that people deserve to have. And for the fact that Elizabeth Warren wants to means test this just proves that she's not a progressive. And McChesney lays this out perfectly in this article. Please check this out. And, I believe, as I said, the more Elizabeth, this is what I said before, but Elizabeth Warren, the more we learn about her, the more we're not going to like her. And the more she's going to be exposed, and the less we're going to want to go out there and try and talk about how she's so similar to Bernie Sanders, how she's the same as Bernie Sanders. Nobody in their right mind who truly follows politics and knows anything about Elizabeth Warren and knows anything about Bernie Sanders knows that they are not the same person. And McChesney lays it out here. I've laid it out multiple times on my podcast. If you watch Kyle Kulinski, Secular Talk, you listen to Jimmy Dore, you listen to any real progressive out there, they all know that Elizabeth Warren is not a real progressive. She is at best, a slightly left of center politician. And that's if you want to look at her economic policy, that's where she is. She's not even very good. She's not good at all on foreign policy. So foreign policy is just horrible. She's atrocious. So she's not leftist. She's not leftist at all. So and anybody that pushes that is either lying or they're completely uneducated on what the different policy positions of Elizabeth Warren are, or they're just they're shilling for her and they just want her because she's a female, and we need to have a female you need to have a female as president because that's the important thing. So obviously people don't know anything about Elizabeth Warren if they're going out there and talking about how she's all these things that she clearly is not.